Chapter 402. Super God Haya, who already held the absolute advantage, suddenly logged off. His partner, who was unparalleled in close combat, did the same after killing the last phoenix. This behavior didn't conform to the logic of a normal person. It caused the onlookers in Area A to discuss spiritedly. There were even some who shouted about shady dealings. It was a scene of chaos. The VIP room was also a mess. Yuzheng struggled in his own vomit. Snot and tears sprayed out. The physiological effects and psychological effects of this were probably the same. The room's self-cleaning system was activated, and a multifunctional robot came up to clean. The group of second-generation kids were avoiding snakes and scorpions. No one could stay in the room any longer. Zhu Ling, who had been sitting on the sofa all this time, stood up and walked outside. "Brother?" Zhu Maoxuan shouted and hurriedly chased after him. Before he left, he instructed Fan Chu, "Take this, brother. No, let's switch rooms first. You watch him. You can go over after you clean up." Zhu Maoxuan didn't pay attention to Fan Chu's reaction after he finished speaking. He directly chased after Zhu Ling. When he reached the door, he saw Zhu Ling communicating with someone through his wristband. He hadn't gone far. Zhu Maoxuan breathed a sigh of relief, but he also had a headache. He hated Luonan and Tianxi ever since the disastrous failure of his courtship at Ocean Sky Cloud City. He had been looking for an opportunity to vent his anger. Tonight, he learned from Fan Chu that Luonan and Tianxi had come over. He wanted to trip them up and give this adulterous couple a taste of his own medicine. It wasn't that he couldn't do it, but he wouldn't have any face to do so. It just so happened that his cousin and a group of military officers were upstairs being invited to a banquet. The identities of both parties attending the banquet were quite special. He wanted to borrow this opportunity to play a bit more clever. Who would have thought that the opening he chose was that Yu Jing didn't know how to do things? He had people evacuate the room early on, causing a disturbance in the hero seat. Zhu Maoxuan had been impulsive for a moment. He wanted to play around in the game before he acted in reality to warm up the place. He never expected to be slapped in the face by someone else. There was a risk of failure in all his plans. Zhu Maoxuan was fully aware that his cousin thought highly of himself. Now that he had transferred from the city defense to the field forces, it was time for him to care about his reputation. It wasn't a big deal to help him out normally, but if he did things too viciously, Zhu Maoxuan probably wouldn't put in any effort. His mind was spinning like a windmill, thinking of how to persuade her. Unexpectedly, Zhu Ling glanced at him. When he picked up the phone, he no longer used the guttural ventriloquism that the military was accustomed to. He switched to normal speech mode. "Little brother Weikan. Yes, I'm still down at Frost River Reality." Zhu Maoxuan's ears perked up as soon as he heard the 3 words younger brother Weikan. His plan for tonight's most ideal situation, aside from his older cousin Zhu Ling, also included dragging this younger brother Weikan into the water. It was just that he wasn't sure if the rumors he'd heard were useful or not. He could only deal with it as a contingency plan. Zhu Ling glanced at him again and said his name. "Yes, it's Maoxuan. There's no need. I'm almost done here. I'll go up immediately." As soon as Zhu Maoxuan heard this, he thought, "This is bad." He didn't care if he would anger Zhu Ling as he gestured repeatedly. Zhu Ling ignored him and continued to exchange pleasantries. Just when Zhu Maoling was about to give up all hope, the topic suddenly changed. "All right, I'll wait for you for a while." Zhu Maoxuan nearly choked and forgot to be happy. Zhu Ling hung up and turned his head to look at Zhu Maoxuan. "Aren't you waiting for him?" Zhu Maoxuan knew that he could not play dumb in front of Zhu Ling, so he no longer concealed it. A happy expression appeared on his face as he cupped his hands in thanks. "It's all thanks to you, brother Ling." Zhu Ling's face was indifferent, but his eyes were very sharp. "That Chen fellow is arrogant to his bones. He never gives favors for free. It seems that he's plotting something big this time." Zhu Maoxuan thought to himself, "Nonsense. He's the vice president of the student council. His father is the deputy chief of staff of the city defense army. Everyone knows that he's plotting something when he finds someone from your field army for a drink despite being 2 streets away. Thinking about it, Chen Weikan is about to graduate. Perhaps he's starting to pave the way for his future? He's not going to continue his studies and is going to develop his career in the military?" Zhu Maoxuan didn't care about what Chen Weikan was plotting. He only cared about tonight's grand plan to trample on people. He only cared about whether or not it would be carried out smoothly. He laughed mischievously. "I invited him to drink some wine and meet his underlings. What kind of favor is that?" Zhu Ling stared at him. "What about going a step further?" Zhu Maoxuan gave a crafty smile. "That's what I owe you, brother Ling." Seeing him like this, Zhu Ling suddenly laughed. "All right, It just so happens that there's something I need your help with. Xuanhuan's heart was empty, but he quickly patted his chest. Brother Ling, I will absolutely not discount your orders. As they were speaking, the door to the VIP room in the back opened. Fan Chu hurriedly came out and saw his brothers chatting outside the door. He was a bit embarrassed, but he forced a smile and dodged towards the corridor. Xuanhuan was a bit annoyed when he saw this. What are you doing? Didn't I tell you to change rooms? Fan Chu hurriedly said, Young Master Sun, I'm going to handle this matter. Please wait a moment. What about that Yu Zhang in the room? I've already called someone. Here they're coming. I guarantee that they'll sober him up quickly and clean him up. Xuanhuan saw that there really was a waiter coming over. He grunted and raised his chin, telling Fan Chu to get lost. Zhu Ling muttered to himself in silence while Xuanhuan was berating Fan Chu. It wasn't until the waiter walked past him and entered the VIP room that he opened his mouth and said, In a moment before Chen Weikan arrives, go to that room. Not together? No. You go first. You go together with that Yu Zhang. Zhu Ling glanced at his cousin and spoke with a tone that could not be refused. Just the two of you. Xuanhuan was stunned. This didn't seem right. While Xuanhuan was dizzy, Fan Chu's head was full of questions. He was very vexed. From his perspective, Xuanhuan's request to change rooms was preposterous. Everyone knew that resources like the VIP room had to be reserved. Now that Frost River reality was full, changing rooms was easier said than done. Fortunately, his luck was pretty good tonight. After a delay of 2 minutes, there was a VIP room that wanted to check out. He used a god-level operation to get the room before the customers lined up to reserve it. But just as he spoke to the group of second-generation young masters in the room, the VIP room guide sent a message. The customer who just checked out refused to leave and requested to renew the room. If this was the case, Fan Chu could have used the excuse of store regulations to evade it. But he heard 2 names from the guide. Young Master Xia, Young Master who are both here. Fan Chu's heart was about to explode. He barely managed to deal with Xuanhuan's questions. He took a few steps around the corridor and arrived outside the Frost 7 room. The door to the VIP room was wide open. The beautiful guide was at the door, dealing with the questions of the customers inside. For a time, she was in a difficult situation. Why didn't you wait for us to leave before initializing it? Isn't Frost River reality supposed to preserve the data of all VIP customers? Canceling or renewing a subscription is very normal. We admit that we lost our reservation, but we haven't even unloaded our equipment. We haven't even left the door. Why are you doing this to us? We won't make things difficult for you. Where's Yinlu? You can have her come over and communicate with us. Fan Chu's heart was filled with bitterness when he heard the name Yinlu. If he really did attract that person, then his position as store manager would be pretty much abolished. He was a clever person. Although he had not entered, he had a general understanding of what was going on from these snippets of conversation. In the end, it was a disaster caused by him forcefully cutting the queue. In order to replace the customers who had made reservations, he had done a small violation of the rules. Before the automatic cancellation process was completed, he had initialized Frost 7's data a few seconds in advance. As long as the customers truly wanted to leave, this was nothing. However, when they changed their minds and wanted to renew the reservation, the 2 processes did not verify each other's faults. This caused a loophole. But what was going on with the data? Fan Chu pondered for a moment. He braced himself and walked in. He saw that there weren't many people in the room. Aside from young Master Xie, young Master Hu, Xie Junping, and Hu Huaying, there was a relatively unfamiliar person. He looked like a pale scholar, but his voice was very sharp. Most of the questioning words came from his mouth. Young Master Xie, young Master Hu, sorry. I'm the manager here, Fan Chu. Sorry for what happened just now. It might be because of the opening of a new store. There are some problems with the system connection. It's not just this room. The other room, Frost 2, also has a similar problem. We are currently working on solving it. Fan Chu gathered his courage and secretly used a trick. He was prepared to put these 2 headaches together and solve them together. Renewing the reservation is definitely not a problem. However, reserving the room is a bit difficult. If the 3 of you don't mind, can we switch rooms? If Xie Junping agreed, Fan Chu dared to let them go to Frost 2, where Xuanhuan and the others were. They would swap rooms and make the disturbance disappear without a trace. He had a good plan. Unfortunately, the crux of the matter did not lie here. Fan Chu, is it? Let's not talk about renewing the reservation for now. I want to ask you right now. How are you going to return the data that was erased by your initialization? The one who spoke was Xie Junping. He was dressed rather strangely today. He wore a retro training suit and a button gown that was loose from top to bottom. At first glance he really did have the air of an immortal. It was just that his face was dark and his mood was terrible. That's right. Who cares about this shitty room? We want the data. The data. The brother with the shrill voice was certainly a bit neurotic. He was clapping his hands and shouting. He was extremely excited, and he felt as if he could go crazy at any moment. Fan Chu felt that things weren't too good. He probed, "Young Master Xia, are you talking about the game data? We definitely have it here. If we switch to any other room we can seamlessly access it." Bullsh *T game. The neurotic brother jumped. He really jumped. He jumped again and again as he waved his fists. That was the structure of the magic array that I painstakingly deduced. I finally had a bit of inspiration with great difficulty, and now it's all F*King ruined. Ruined. It wasn't successful in the first place. Xuanhuan was the most indifferent of the three. He had always disapproved of Xie Junping's methods, so he muttered in a low voice. Neurotic, oh, he was actually the former president of the Mystic Arts Research Society, Du Yong. His ears were extremely sharp. When he heard this, he glared at him and cursed, "Screw off. Amateurs shouldn't interrupt." Xuanhuan was too lazy to bicker with a neurotic person. He just silently gave him the middle finger. Xie Junping's face was still dark as he stared at Fan Chu. We used the projector in the VIP room to make changes to the design. We tossed and turned for the better part of a day and we were close to success. Then, with your initialization, everything was wiped clean. And these are things that I will have great use for very soon. Tell me clearly right now. Does your system automatically save them? Can I get my data back? Fan Chu's forehead was beaded with sweat. He knew that this matter would not be easily resolved. In the end he did not dare to answer directly. He could only say, "Young Master Xia, I will immediately contact the technicians and do my best to give you a satisfactory answer." Xie Junping's feet moved. Based on his previous temper he would have already kicked him. However, this period of abiding by the precepts and cultivating still had some effect. The nameless fire stirred and was actually suppressed again. He silently recited, "Abiding by the precepts and advancing diligently, restraint comes first." Then he no longer paid attention to Fan Chu and turned to Du Yong. "Sissy, who else do you think can do it according to the previous draft?" Du Yong was irritated. He paced in place, grinding for a long time before saying, "When it comes to the mystic arts, I still rather admire Tang Yi. Then contact her and ask her for help." Du Yong gaped. Whatever neurosis and irritation had disappeared. All that was left was embarrassment and embarrassment. Xie Junping was finally irritated when he saw this. He stepped forward and grabbed Du Yong by the collar. "You led me through the door and then this happened. So what if you help me ask someone?" Du Yong did not have any temper at this moment. He even stuttered, "But Tang Yi, she's not likely to care." "How do you know if you don't ask?" "Then can I ask?" Xie Junping took a deep breath and let go of Du Yong's collar. He took 2 steps back and massaged his temples and thought for a moment. He dialed a number through his wristband. After a few seconds the call connected. He coughed and naturally lowered his posture. "Master, there's something I want to ask you. It's about, how do I say it, it's about a problem in the mystic arts. Aren't you very good at, very interested in this? So, I want to ask about this thing about magical arrays." Xie Junping's stuttering appearance was too different from before. Even Du Yong, who was conflicted about whether or not to call Tang Yi, could not help but turn his head to look. Xie Junping did not care about this. He walked a few steps deeper into the room and grunted in response. Suddenly he raised his voice. "Hey, you're at Frost River Reality? Which store? Aurora Cloud City? Holy crap." Xie Junping suddenly became excited. Hurry up. I'm at Frost 7 in the VIP area. Husseiner and Sissy Du are also here. Can't leave? Entertaining friends? That group. Can I go? Which room? Luxury room A, Frost 7. Okay, we'll be right there." He hung up and clapped his hands. "Don't worry about this for now. Hey Sissy Du, did you get through?" Du Yong responded with a bitter face. "Tang Yi said she has a party tonight, a date tomorrow, and a mission the day after tomorrow. She won't take any orders." Xie Junping rolled his eyes. "Then let's disband. Master and his friends are here. Let's go meet them. Yeah, let's see if there are any other opportunities to turn things around." As he spoke, his gaze turned to Fan Chu. "You prepare 4 exquisite fruit platters and enough alcohol. Oh no, non-alcoholic drinks. Send them to Frost 7. Be quick. Also, we can't delay here. Hey, why are you in a daze? Do you remember? Frost 7. How could Fanchu not remember? He had personally given this room to Yu Jing an hour ago to give him face. There was indeed a young man called Nanster inside. He was Zhu Maoshuan's target tonight. And he was also deeply involved in it. Fanchu's mind buzzed. Every word that entered his ears seemed to carry a tone of ridicule. He did not make a sound. With great difficulty, he used his many years of habit to nod in agreement. Then he turned around in a panic, forgetting that the guide was behind him. His foot hooked onto the guide's high heels. His body instantly lost balance and he fell forward. The guide cried out involuntarily. Chapter 403. A magical array? Luonan hung up. He was still a bit confused for a time. He did not find it strange that Xie Junping had appeared in Frost River reality. However, he had not understood the logic behind the topic of mystic arts. Speaking of the mystic arts and magical arrays, Luonan could transfer a few people to teach Xie Junping with his current connections. But with the difference in understanding between the inner world and the secular world, Luonan could not afford to make a fool of himself in the end, in case he encountered a swindler or something. Luonan felt that he should first help Xie Junping check things out. However, Luonan's focus was not on this right now. The reason why he wanted to quit the game and give up on the hero seat despite his irreversible victory was because the important person he invited, Cat Eyes, had already arrived. She had contacted him through the Hexier. He came out of the room while he was talking to Xie Junping. He stood by the door and waited. The call ended. He had already sensed Cat Eye's arrival, but his gaze swept over her. He was unable to immediately catch sight of her. Only when the real person stood before him and looked at him quietly did Luonan lock onto his target. Today, Cat Eyes was dressed in a minimalist style. She wore a light blue high-waist skirt, a white sweater and nude high heels. She was so plain that not a single pattern could be seen. This was the first time Luonan saw her wearing a skirt, so he was unable to recognize her at first glance. However, it must be said that it was hard to change a person's habits. She was clearly wearing a plain dress, but Cat Eyes wore a black motorcycle jacket over it. The jacket was adorned with rivets. Paired with her parted hairstyle that covered half of her eyes, her large earrings on one side, and her fiery red lip makeup, she exuded a decadent aura that said, "I am very beautiful, but I will destroy myself at any moment." Cat Eyes must have drunk before coming. The faint smell of alcohol lingered around her as she stood before him. It was faint but not unpleasant. In his heart, Luonan felt that Cat Eye's current outfit was very beautiful. At the very least, it was more appealing to his taste than the nightclub style or the street dance style of the past. Cat Eyes tilted her head slightly and sized him up. Luonan did not know what she was thinking, but he could see disdain, provocation, and so on in her slightly raised eyes. She lacked the goodwill that a fellow practitioner should have. In the next moment, a smile blossomed on Cat Eye's face and lips. It was just like her makeup. Her plain foundation was strong. She took another step forward and was already sticking to Luonan's shoulder. She reached out her hand and hooked onto the crook of the arm of the boy in front of her. However, Cat Eyes was wearing high heels. She was taller than Luonan by 4 or 5 centimeters. This action was like a deformed hug between old friends. In short, it was very intimate. Especially when her slightly greasy red lips pressed against Luonan's ear. She lightly breathed, "Master, I will heed your call." The combination of alcohol and perfume produced an intoxicating magnetic force. Luonan's body froze for a moment. He was definitely nervous. This was the first time in his life that someone had called him master, especially a beautiful woman who was so close to him. He could feel the warmth and elasticity of her body through half of his arm. At this moment, Luonan could faintly feel that there were 2 to 3 types of hormones secreting abnormally within his body. This caused his heartbeat, blood pressure, and so on to rise. He even felt hungry. However, after the physical reaction, a more subtle psychological factor arose. He couldn't distinguish more details, but he was unusually sensitive to the stimuli that caused it. His body did not move, but his eyes passed over Cat Eye's shoulder and stared straight ahead. He whispered, "What did you call me?" "My master, the man who dominates me." Cat Eyes let out a low laugh. Her greasy breath lingered around Luonan's ear and neck. Luonan's eyebrows jumped. Cat Eyes' voice was sharp and clear. But when she deliberately lowered her voice, it had a metallic quality to it. It was like a light and thin blade scraping away fine lint while sticking close to a person's skin. It was comfortable and chilling. It was just like what Cat Eyes was doing right now. Her body created a sense of intimacy, but her bones were ice-cold vigilance and resistance. There was even an even more hidden and intense inclination towards destruction. Tisk. Luonan was a bit annoyed. Did this mean that his good intentions weren't repaid? Originally he wanted to call her over and have a good chat. It would have been fine if she had maintained her previous indifference, but who was she trying to mock by putting on the face of a mistress? Could it be that I really want to destroy you? It was this flashing thought that suddenly touched a certain button in a complex physiological and psychological mechanism. He suddenly froze for a moment, and a certain advanced thought burst out of its eggshell. It was like a gorgeous and malevolent viper, emitting a hissing hiss. It was very easy to destroy. This thought was born, and the first thing to respond was his body's instincts. In an instant, the secretion of various hormones within his body exploded. His heartbeat, blood pressure, and hunger increased once more. Together, they formed a feeling of excitement that he had never felt in his entire life. The excitement was so sudden and intense that an astonishing heat burst forth from his internal organs. His entire body seemed to swell by a size. This sudden burst of energy acted on his nervous system. Luonan's forearm unconsciously raised to exert force, but it touched Cat Eye's elbow. He subconsciously closed his fingers and firmly grasped it. The motorcycle jacket was embedded with rivets in this position. The metal granules pressed into his palm, giving him a bit of pain. Cat Eye's mocking name came in a 3-hit combo at this time. Master, what do you need? Luonan looked straight ahead. He did not look at Cat Eyes, and he only let Cat Eyes see his side profile. After a hot and dry breath, the corners of his lips curled up. He exerted a bit of strength in his cheeks, but it was nothing compared to the restlessness of the living starry sky. The stimulation from the slight pain in his palm forced out a fidgety and unyielding emotion. It was like a fireball, the sound of it piercing straight into the sky. It burned the living starry sky, causing all the stars in the sky to lose their color. The others were fine, but the life sketches of the believers who were closely related to him had minute deformations. There was the possibility of them becoming chaotic and unbalanced in the next moment. Cat Eyes was not the only one affected by this. Luonan finally sensed that something was wrong. His thoughts changed once more and his impulsive emotions submerged. Only then did he put an end to the surging waves of the living starry sky. The danger did not manifest. It only rippled slightly on a level that was hard for the believers to detect. And Cat Eyes clearly did not sense it at all. So in essence, Cat Eyes was just saying it. She was powerless against her own fate. How pitiful. The restless emotions were suppressed, and Luonan recovered his usual way of thinking. He targeted Cat Eyes, and there was even a faint feeling of pity. TSK, this description was far too hypocritical. In any case, Luonan temporarily erased those extreme thoughts. The difference in the positioning of the living starry sky naturally pushed his state of mind to a higher level. It erased most of his misgivings, allowing him to speak more leisurely and casually. Let's call you something else. This name is too funny. Cat Eyes did not know that a deadly storm had silently arisen in the space of a single breath. It had silently dispersed. Her heart was filled with negative emotions, but they were pushed to her face. They transformed into endless mockery and stimulation. So my boss. Up to you. Luonan actually had some self-awareness of being a boss. Perhaps in Cat Eye's eyes he had a similar image. There was no point in forcefully seeking to change it. He was still holding Cat Eye's elbow at this time, and the two's bodies were pressed together in a more powerful manner. It was fine when Luonan was in a restless mood, but something was wrong now. Luonan took the initiative to let go and spoke softly. Brother Papercut will come over in a bit. I'll wait for him here. You go in first. Leicester is inside. Cat Eyes was clearly stunned when she heard the names Papercut and Xuele. This situation was a bit different from what she had imagined. She felt a bit awkward. Perhaps. Yes, boss. In the end, Cat Eyes let go of Luonan's arm. She wore a smile that was both intoxicated and mocking as she walked into the room. Luonan did not move at all. After he let go, his slightly outstretched arm was actually stiff. Of course, his words were just an excuse. He had contacted Papercut long ago. Papercut and Tianxi were in the strategy room right now. They would come over in a moment. It wasn't like he didn't know the place. What was there to welcome? The reason why he said this was because he needed a buffer. Tonight's meeting was far from what he had originally imagined. Without Papercut, not only did he not know what to say, but his mood was also off. Yes, the restlessness that he had just suppressed had come to add to the chaos after Cat Eyes left. The entrance to the luxurious room was wooden. Area A's 2D and 3D interweaved. The gorgeous and bewildering light and shadow effects made him even more annoyed. Advertisements were inevitable in such a crowded area. 7 or 8 out of 10 advertisements were supported by handsome men and beautiful women. Luonan had seen them in the past, but now that he saw the beautiful female stars flashing across the hologram, his feelings were different. It really was different. Back when he was facing Cat Eyes, he had only used simple concepts and descriptions. He had thought of them and used them when he felt that they were appropriate. But now, under the bewildering light and shadow, these rigid concepts were like the residual sensations on half of his body. They were faintly discernible, but they came alive one after another. The entire world that operated according to established laws and principles was becoming more and more complex and chaotic. Luonan subconsciously licked his lips. He waited for over a minute, but Papercut had yet to return. Even Xie Junping, who said he would come to ask for guidance, was nowhere to be seen. Though there were only Cat Eyes and Shui Lei in the room, the atmosphere was strangely harmonious. They were chatting happily. All of this was reflected in Luonan's sensory network. It was as if he could see it with his own eyes. Shui Lei asked Cat Eyes about her occupation. He was very curious about the lifestyle of a veteran ability user. Cat Eyes picked up a piece of fruit and answered casually, "I'm just an ordinary dance teacher. I partnered up with someone to establish a studio. It's mainly for short-term training in the entertainment circle. Occasionally I'll do some choreography." "Wow, you get to meet a lot of celebrities?" "Not really. I mainly train newcomers. There are quite a few silly, sweet and black-bellied women who dream of being a celebrity. But a considerable portion of them might go drink and sing with celebrities in the blink of an eye. It's very interesting." Cat Eyes said to Shui Lei with a smile, "If you have the time, you can come to my place to earn some extra money. You can get to know some pretty girls." She gestured to Shui Lei, "A young, strong and fit coach like you. Those women would love nothing more than to swallow you whole." Shui Lei's face immediately flushed red. He waved his hand over and over, I don't know how to dance." Traditional martial arts routines are also a type of dance. Even though live-action movies have declined, there has always been a market for superpowers, martial arts, and the like. Many management companies have a demand in this area. I still have to go help out with the gym master." Shui Lei still couldn't quite accept such a dirty topic. He found an excuse for himself with great difficulty, but the heavens knew that Divine Yu Gym was about to close down. What else could he help out with? Cat Eyes went, "Oh, I have an impression that you came from a Daoguan. Do you want to open a Daoguan and accept disciples in the future?" "Yeah, that would be extremely ideal for me. Like the gym master or like the society's Mr. Giant Arm." They were already talking about their ideals. It shouldn't be a problem to go in, right? Luonan took a deep breath, put on an indifferent expression and walked into the room. Cat Eyes saw Luonan enter, but she pretended not to see him. Her behavior was completely different from her intimate behavior outside. On the other hand, Shui Lei let out a long breath. His tall and sturdy body shrunk into the sofa, indicating that he couldn't handle this big sister. It was better for Nanster to do it. Other than the luxurious seats under the suitcases, there was also a sofa in the corner of the large luxurious room used for conversation. Right now, Shui Lei and Cat Eyes were sitting on either side of the sofa in the corner. Cat Eyes was in the middle and Shui Lei was in the corner, maintaining a polite social distance. Luonan looked around and walked over. He wanted to sit next to Shui Lei when he started walking, but in the blink of an eye, he had already bypassed the coffee table and walked to the middle seat. He was going to sit together with Cat Eyes. Shui Lei didn't think too much about it. He picked up a canned drink from the coffee table and tossed it over. He said, "You haven't even eaten the fruit platter yet. If you put any more, the taste will change." Luonan caught the drink and conveniently sat next to Cat Eyes. The sofa must have been too soft. His body sunk down the moment he sat down. The polite distance between them suddenly shortened by quite a bit. When he stretched his body to grab the fruit, he was once again pressed against Cat Eyes' body. He didn't know where he touched, but he felt as if his shoulder and elbow had been electrified. Moreover, perhaps it was the stimulation of the gastric juices, but his mouth was secreting large amounts of saliva. Chapter 404. Luonan felt like a dog. Xie Junping and his group didn't show up when he needed them. But when it was the most awkward time, they danced around happily. It was fine if they came, but Mo Peng and Mo Han didn't have fun at the reality battlefield and the uncanny valley. Why did they come back? Actually, Mo Peng and Mo Han came back because they were worried. They didn't understand. Why did Luonan fight so well in the hero seat and then give up in such a great situation? His wristband said that he was fine, but how could it be accurate? Mo Peng and Mo Han came back and the others came back with a clamor. Only Yu Qin and Turner were missing. Those two were probably embarrassed by Yu Zheng's actions and deliberately hid. But who could compare to Luonan in embarrassment? His intimate actions with cat eyes were completely seen by that bastard Xie Junping. Oh, there was also Shuelei. Even if the angle was a bit off, Xie Junping's reaction was more or less the same. Yes, it was Xie Junping's reaction. That bro's reaction was too exaggerated. Not only was he stunned at the door, he actually wanted to turn around and walk out. Walk out my ass. Even if Luonan and Cat Eyes did have a bit of an ambiguous relationship. Well, even if they really kissed, why are you pretending to be pure? Aren't you just luring others to think in the wrong direction? Luonan took a deep breath. Cat Eyes' wine fragrance still lingered in his mouth and nose, including the delicate touch of her hair against his lips. This abruptly woke him up, and he suddenly felt a bit of gratitude towards this old driver. Due to the haste of the matter, he was stunned on the spot. He didn't know how to make evasive movements. He still maintained an extremely intimate and ambiguous relationship with Cat Eyes. In reality, it was just lips kissing forehead. If Xie Junping hadn't reacted too quickly and messed up the formation, Mo Peng and Mo Han, and the others would have definitely seen them. Then they would have exploded. Luckily, he could still salvage the situation. Luonan suddenly straightened his back and stood up. His knees bumped into the coffee table due to the haste. The sound of the crash was quite clear in the room. Xie Junping was quickly pushed in by the door. Mo Peng and Mo Han also swarmed in. The originally empty luxury room was instantly filled to the brim. The fruit and drinks Xie Junping brought weren't afraid that no one would be able to digest. Luonan took advantage of the chaos to drag his aching legs 2 steps outside. He nearly bumped into Shuelei, who was returning with a tray of wine. His best friend shifted his body to maintain the balance of the wine tray. He was as dedicated as a real bartender, and he had an innocent expression that said, "I don't know anything," on his face. However, his flickering eyes had long since betrayed him. It was a bit strange to introduce her. Dance teacher? The group of boys and girls were quite confused. This didn't fit in with Luonan's circle. Papercut had just returned with Tianxi not too long ago. He didn't even have the time to greet Cat Eyes. As the etiquette teacher, Papercut took it upon himself to block the bullet. He even pulled Tianxi along with him. Didn't you say that you've recently become interested in the mystic arts? Aside from the school society your little brother is in, there are actually some interest societies, hobbyist societies, and the like in society. For example, we are all like-minded people who gather together. Cat Eyes is a senior member of this society. You can get closer to her in the future. Tianxi didn't open her mouth after returning to the room, but most of her gaze fell on the sofa corner. Half of it was given to Luonan, and the other half was given to Cat Eyes. She was suddenly seen through by Papercut and her mind panicked. However, she was quick-witted in the end. She immediately had the awareness to act as a shield. She immediately walked forward, bowed, and extended her hand across the short table. "Hello, Sister Cat Eyes. I'm Tianxi. Please advise me in the future." Cat Eyes still hadn't gotten up from the sofa. She just extended her hand and lightly touched Tianxi's. She appeared a bit cold. "I can't say advise you, but since you've entered this circle, there are opportunities to exchange experiences." Tianxi smiled warmly. "I haven't officially joined yet. Is the day when you're involved with a certain person still far away?" Tianxi was a bit startled. She locked gazes with Cat Eyes in the next moment. She only felt that her hair seemed misty, but it was actually cold, clear, and sharp. There was also a subtle implication that said, "I understand everything." Her heart clenched a bit. She was actually stunned for a time. The two extremely beautiful women looked at each other across the short table. The scene was clearly extremely gorgeous, but under the dim lighting, the dark tones quietly played the leading role. There was an instant when the noisy room suddenly quieted down. Then it was covered up by Papercut's pretentious Shanghai laughter. Papercut had done quite well, but he had underestimated the power of the young's imagination. "It's a bit weird." Mo Peng and Mo Han whispered to each other. "Did you notice? Nanster seems to know only big sisters." "Oh, maybe it's aunties? How heartbreaking." Luonan held back his laughter and glanced to the side. The current Cat Eyes was indeed decadent. Her flame-red lip makeup and her hairstyle that covered half of her cheeks were very flirtatious. Under the dim lighting, she appeared to be much older than Luonan, a 15 or 16-year-old student. Perhaps she really was twice his age. Strictly speaking, calling her auntie wasn't a big deal. But the young man's imagination was unleashed. It was a standard weapon of mass destruction. It was impossible to control. Mo Peng said, "Could it be an indecent relationship or an Azura field? Don't talk nonsense. Maybe they're just friends despite the difference in age. But the problem right now is that the girls Nanster is dating are all older than him. This trend isn't right. Why is it like this? I heard that little Nanster's family situation." "What about my family?" "I'm talking about his birth parents. His parents aren't by his side. He misses them for a long time and so on. Maybe his Oedipus complex is a bit heavy?" Searched to death. Luo Nan nearly crushed the empty glass in his hand. "Can you two be any louder? Don't you know that a good half of the people in the room are ability users? You're trying to ruin me." Before he could finish his thought, two people in the room had already spat. Papercut had just taken a glass of alcohol from Shuele and took a sip. He had come back late, so he didn't see the most awkward moments. He lacked resistance and now he collapsed from being teased. It was only logical that he choked on the peat-flavored whiskey. The other person who spat was Xie Junping. It was just that he spat out mineral water. This was a bit odd. Luo Nan discovered that Xie Junping hadn't touched a drop of alcohol today. He didn't even drink a beverage. He just drank a glass of mineral water. Also, were Mo Peng and Mo Han whispering that loudly? Xie Junping, who was nearly 5 meters away, could actually hear them? When did his eyes and ears become so sharp? Luo Nan sized up Xie Junping seriously. The two hadn't met many times during this time. Luo Nan felt that Xie Junping had gotten a bit thinner, but his spirit wasn't bad. What was funny was that Xie Junping was wearing a very old-fashioned button gown. It was the uniform of an old man who practiced his morning exercises. No matter how Luo Nan looked at it, Xie Junping looked completely out of place in the amusement center. Xie Junping had a very stiff appearance. It didn't seem like he was cosplaying or anything of the sort. Luo Nan thought back to the magical array and other elements that Luo Nan had mentioned before. The matter was quite odd, but it wasn't easy to ask about it. Then he saw Papercut's penetrating insight. People of the same age as Mo Peng and Mo Han shouldn't be placed together with Cat Eyes and the others. There were many topics that simply couldn't be discussed. Papercut was lucky enough to escape the misfortune of spitting out alcohol from his nostrils. He felt that he needed to increase the intensity of his brainwashing, so he ferociously told Mo Peng and the other young boys and girls, "People like us all like those mysterious things. We often get together and exchange our experiences. Cat Eyes and I just happened to be in the vicinity today, so we took the opportunity to come over and play. Please don't mind us if we usurp the host." Oh, no wonder Nanster wanted to join the Mystic Arts Research Society. Mo Peng knew of this situation, so he filled in the blanks in an instant. However, his gaze continued to move back and forth in the corner of the sofa. The Azura arena had nothing to do with one's hobbies. Mo Han's ability to accept these strange things was a bit lacking. She turned to look at her close friends. Mystic arts. Is it something like tarot cards? Tarot cards are very effective. Chiu Peipei, who had always been a person of few words, was actually a fan of the related field. She was a bit excited. This also ignited a small wave of discussion among the girls. Although it was far from Papercut's implicit description, wasn't this the most ideal situation? Luo Nan gave Papercut a thumbs up in his mind. He remembered that Papercut had said this back at Ocean Sky Cloud City. Back then he had fooled Xie Junping and Hu Huaying. Now it was Mo Han and Mo Peng's turn. It could be said that Papercut and Luo Nan were echoing each other without a single flaw. Look, the Mystic Arts Society will definitely be able to help. Xie Junping turned his head to whisper to Du Yong. He had an expression that said, "Listen to me." Du Yong still had a mixture of impatience and skepticism on his face. There are many branches of the mystic arts. Magical arrays are a very specialized field. Papercut's ears were sharp. He tilted his head to look at Du Yong. "What did you just say? Magical arrays?" Du Yong's patience had long since been exhausted from the tedious introductions. All that was left was impatience. Papercut's question was the same as opening his mouth to release a flood. He didn't care what the situation was. He just raised his voice and said, "Recently old Sierra and I were at a club. We made contact with a fellow practitioner. He expressed that he could guide us through the door, but there was a threshold of spiritual awakening that required the assistance of a magical array." His voice was sharp and soft. He spoke quickly, and the field he touched upon was mysterious. In the time it took to say a few words, the group of boys and girls were already confused. Chapter 405. Seeing this, Papercut gave Du Yong a meaningful glance. He wanted Du Yong to slow down. However, Papercut still did not understand Du Yong. This neurotic fellow was already on the verge of collapsing from all his hard work. He would not stop talking. Hu Huaying saw the problem and wanted to stop him, but in the end she was unable to. This brother was completely stuck inside. He just treated everyone present as part of the Mystic Arts Society. He minded his own business and said, "Let me use the projector." He fiddled with his wristband and connected the data to the projector. A dazzling complex diagram appeared in the center of the room's gaming area. It was a combination-type magical array, and it looked quite complete. The magical array was roughly divided into 4 layers. The overall composition was a deep blue color, and the symbols at the key nodes were dark red and dark gold. The overall color of the array was restrained, but it was very gorgeous. Wow! Mo Peng and the others gasped in surprise. A neatly pieced together, a perfectly organized diagram. It possessed a very artistic feeling. Those special symbols, configurations, and connecting lines were filled with a mysterious beauty that seemed awesome even though they did not understand it. They did not understand Du Yong's theory, but they could feel the shock from it. Of course, it was more suitable for their imaginations. Du Yong grew more and more irritable when he saw this diagram. He fiercely waved his hand twice, warping the light and shadow of the magical array. It took a moment for it to return to normal. "It's this damned format. Damn it." Luonan was quite sensitive when he heard the word format. He raised an eyebrow. "It's not that format. It's the file format." Xie Junping knew what was bothering Luonan. He saw that his companion was unable to communicate normally, so he took the initiative to explain, "The wristband doesn't support the file format of this design diagram. We can only enter read-only mode and look at the projection. However, the computer in the projector in the private room was fine, so we copied it and modified it. We didn't expect it to suddenly reset, so we didn't have time to save it. All our efforts were gone. However, even if we didn't save it, the verification itself had failed." He was in a terrible mood in the VIP room, but he calmed down when he arrived at Luonan's side. He even laughed at himself. "Just a little bit more." Du Yong roared at Xie Junping, but his sharp and gentle voice didn't seem threatening at all. "It's all your fault. You should have given up earlier. Why did you cancel the subscription?" Xie Junping spoke to him kindly. "You've already tried more than 10 times before. Do you remember what Tutor said? If you make the same mistake 3 times, it will exceed the limits of rationality. You are full of dochi after that. I think it's not wrong to ask you to calm down." It's rare to see Xie Junping reasoning with someone. Luonan snickered to himself, but Papercut came over and whispered, "Do you think of anything when you see this thing?" "Yes, something not so good." Luonan knew what Papercut was talking about. Last time at Fudong Main Street's Frost River Reality, it was also a magic array. It was also a member of Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society. His name was Huang something. Just like that, the forged human-faced arachnid became the experimental product of the Order of Justice. Luonan was still extremely sensitive to such matters. Luonan's gaze rested on the projection of the magic array. From the perspective of the mystic arts, Luonan didn't have much to say. At most, he had a bit of a basic concept. However, from the perspective of the operational structure of energy and information, he had a bit of a right to speak. He tried to straighten out the order laws and principles inside, and he started with the 3-level structure of formatting theory out of habit. He was in trance for a time. On the other side, Papercut directly asked Luonan, "This magic array can be used immediately, right? What I mean is that you don't need to arrange and engrave it. You just need to use the light from the projector." Yes. This is what Tutor meant." Du Yong nodded like he was pounding garlic. He was actually able to see this point with a single glance. Du Yong's confidence in Papercut and the society instantly rose. "Did you hear that?" Papercut wanted to talk privately with Luonan, but he saw that this bro was already entranced. Papercut could only give Luonan a light nudge, telling him not to rush into a domain that others could not understand. First, figure out the surrounding information. Once you have a direction, you can talk about professional matters. This way you don't have to worry too much. This was the advice of a veteran. Luonan was quite convinced. However, Luonan really did have a vague idea after sweeping a few glances, and it wasn't from formatting theory. It was a very rare situation. Luonan reluctantly glanced a few more times, temporarily turning his mind to the plane of reality. He inexplicably glanced over and saw that Cat Eyes had been tasting wine in the sandy corner all this time. She had poured an unknown number of cups. Cat Eyes is in a bad mood. I can tell that she's in a bad mood. Let's not bother her for now. Papercut indicated for the two of them to go first. He felt that Luonan wasn't paying attention, so he repeated the information he got from Du Yong. Only then did he laugh. It's a very familiar situation, right? Luonan nodded. Papercut wasn't present at the time. He must have read the operation briefing in detail afterward. And the main source of information for this briefing was Luonan. Of course he wouldn't forget. It's exactly the same as last time. Are you talking about the Order of Justice? It shouldn't be. If it's the Order of Justice, the inner magic ring will certainly show an extremely clear balance or imbalance. It's quite easy to recognize. I learned a bit after the event. It seems that the technique of forming a magic array through projection has spread over the past 2 years. Many orders are doing this. Then, Luonan felt that the direction was a bit chaotic. I currently have a direction. The main structure of this magic array is quite complete. It doesn't have those laughable mistakes or the rigidity that imitates ancient times. It isn't some kind of charlatan scammer. The difficulty of drawing it isn't high either. All you need to do is be patient. On the other hand, the so-called adaptive adjustment is quite interesting. It tests one's spirituality and creativity in related fields. It looks like a written entrance exam. Is the order recruiting? It's spiritual awakening. The name matches the reality. However, no order has ever done this before. They place more emphasis on the pious faith of their believers. Luonan keenly grasped the most crucial piece of information. Never before? Definitely not. It might not necessarily be an order. It could be a firm like the Society or Her Majesty Empress Wu. Papercut grinned. This is the importance of surrounding information. I just asked little Xia. Their teacher taught them spiritual awakening techniques. There are very clear religious rituals and directions. Luonan rolled his eyes. You can just say it directly. Creation. Which one? Chapter 406. Do they really think they're the creator? Luonan was astonished. They sure have a big tone. Is it some world-class order? This is where the problem lies. Papercut shrugged. I just did a search. There's no relevant information in the database. Neither the society nor the military and political departments of Xia City have any records of this. In other words, it's very likely that this is a new order, a new power that hasn't entered everyone's line of sight. Aren't you going to consult the secretary about this new information? Luonan blinked. Sister Yuan? Trouble her? Is this a rare situation? Papercut nodded. New orders that are so organized right from the start are indeed rare. Actually, there have been very few new orders in recent years. After all, the area covered by the inner world is growing larger and larger. You know what I mean. Luonan really did understand. As the influence of the inner world on the society of the modern world grew stronger and stronger, their ability to unearth and nurture talents was enough to minimize the existence of undiscovered pearls. Under these circumstances, an extremely mature new order suddenly popped out from a crack in the rock. Everyone couldn't help but think in a more conservative direction. Luonan was about to contact He Yuan, but he had second thoughts. It would be best to let her take a look at the magical array. It could be considered a reference. He tried to communicate with Du Yong. Can you make a copy of the magical array? No problem. Du Yong was so straightforward that it was suspicious. Xie Junping gave an additional explanation. According to what the instructor said, the matter of spiritual awakening should be done by gathering the wisdom of all parties. There should also be the help of friends to obtain the best plan. There's no need to be so secretive and secretive. It looked like a very open-minded order. Luonan and Papercut glanced at each other. Papercut asked in a seemingly casual manner, "Is it convenient for you to introduce the instructor who led you in? Perhaps you know him." Xie Junping was truly magnanimous to a certain extent. He didn't even stumble. His last name is Wan. We all call him Dean Wan. He works in a welfare home in the Forest Wall district. He's truly capable. This sort of information acquisition simply didn't give one any sense of accomplishment. Luonan was shaking his head when a light bulb suddenly flashed in his mind. A scene appeared in his mind. It was the memory of him controlling ink to probe the Forest Wall district last week when he was outsourced scouting. He had once seen an ability user there. The ability user had the intention of preaching and preaching. Even children as far away as Trigate district went over to listen. Could it be that person? Of course, it was wrong to make random guesses, but the combination of preaching in Forest Wall area and other factors increased the chances of success. If it was really him, then that person's career would be much bigger than expected. Luonan didn't have any hard evidence for this conjecture. It was hard to explain with the special perspective of long-range perception, so Luonan didn't say much to Papercut. He received the document Du Yong transferred over and used the xianxia to converse with Yuan. However, in the next second the other side indicated that it was busy and the call was not connected. This wasn't strange at all. 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening was one of Yuan's busiest times. Unless it was an extremely urgent matter, it would be pushed to the back. Luonan thought for a bit and created a temporary mission. He pulled Yuan, Papercut, Shuele and Cat Eyes into it. Only then did he send Yuan a message and a document. It was a multi-party sharing. Papercut glanced at it and said, "Oh, Cloud Map. This is the most suitable mapping software for creating magic arrays. It doesn't seem like a particularly closed sect. That might be good news." Luonan noticed that the file displayed a clear icon. The xianxia can read it. Of course, this kind of practical function still needs to be integrated into it. Luonan saw Du Yong gnash his teeth at the read-only projection, but he was unwilling to copy the file onto the computer no matter what. He felt that there really was something wrong with this bro's brain. Luonan sighed, "Forget it. Just use mine." He directly connected the xianxia to the projector. He didn't need to switch. He just opened it from the mission window. He set up an open mode of operation, removing the read-only restriction. Everyone could operate it. He casually swiped and left a clear mark on the magic array. The mark was preserved. In the next moment he cancelled the mark. He tried it a few times and confirmed, "You can modify it now. You can try to recall it and find the feeling. Let us see your train of thought. Relax, this will be preserved at all times." Luonan rubbed his fingers halfway through his words. He seemed to be deep in thought. The feeling of light streaking past was very interesting. It also gave him a more direct feeling toward the order and method of the operation of the magic array's energy and information. It made his already fuzzy inspiration become clear once more. His thoughts immediately sank into it. Du Yong was skeptical at first, but he soon saw the tool window of the cloud map software. His heart swelled with enormous joy. He was just about to operate it when he saw xuanhuan and a few other girls trying to operate it out of curiosity. He didn't even think before he shouted, "Don't break the template." This shout was the limit of his reprimand. The gentle and quiet Chiu Peipei was the most timid. She was so shocked that she took a step back and repeatedly apologized. Xuanhuan wasn't afraid of him. She was even more annoyed that he had startled her friend. She said disdainfully, "There's a rollback operation." Inspiration formed from such a perspective was extremely precious. Who would bear the responsibility if it was destroyed? After a moment of hesitation, Tianxi took the initiative to take on the task of dispatching. "How about we go play in Area A for a while? Junior Luonan clearly isn't doing his job as a host. I'll entertain him so that he doesn't continue to lose face for our acumen college." Wow, Sister C is so heroic. Tianxi's deliberate derogation clearly suited the appetite of this group of boys and girls. It also lowered their rejection mentality to the minimum. It was extremely effective. On the other side, Hu Huaying wasn't stupid either. She echoed Tianxi's words. "I agree with Head Tian's words. The brains of this group of people who study the mystic arts aren't normal. The juniors of 6th High might think that our acumen college is suffering from hysteria. It just so happens that there's a VIP room above us. We can't leave it if we want to. Let's move our position and leave this place for them to play with." The allure of the VIP room exceeded that of the luxury room. It was even stronger than the public area of Area A. Quite a few people's eyes lit up as soon as these words were spoken. Hu Huaying gave Tianxi a meaningful glance, telling her to look after them first. She turned her head to ask Xie Junping for permission. The VIP room was reserved by Xie Junping. The group of people couldn't enter the VIP floor without the appropriate permission. The group of boys and girls walked out the door. Luo Biao whistled. "Normal room, luxury room, VIP room. So we're here to play and level up today." Mo Ping nodded fiercely with a drooling face. "I've been looking forward to the beautiful girls' dance battle for a long time. The lighting effects of the VIP room will certainly be better. I'll design the lighting costumes later. Dance costumes, sailor costumes, flight attendant costumes, and so on. We'll take turns wearing them." "You pervert." Yuan Zihui kicked him. Mo Peng laughed and suddenly pulled open the door to escape. But who knew that when he pulled, the weight wasn't right. It tightened and then loosened. Mo Ping used the wrong amount of strength. His body staggered and fell backward, crashing into Luo Biao. The door was pulled open as well. Someone from outside fell head first into the room and fell face first into the mud. Who's? Yu Zheng. Though the figure fell to the ground, he was still recognized when he struggled to get up. At this time, Yu Zheng was wearing a set of external equipment that had anti-collision functions. It didn't hurt, but he was in a sorry state. Yu Zheng was having all sorts of trouble tonight. He had just crawled out of vomit when he fell face first into the mud. His chin had collided with the smooth floor, hurting his mouth, teeth, and tongue. A belly full of evil fire rushed to his head. He crawled up and shoved Mo Peng. "Motherfucker, what the hell are you doing?" Mo Peng was a bit embarrassed at first, but his expression immediately changed when he was scolded directly in the face. As for that push, it didn't really matter. He wanted to scold back, but he had more confidence in the end. He sneered and said, "I wanted to ask you, how does it feel to be f***ed by a hand cannon in all kinds of positions?" Yu Zheng's face turned pale, then purple. The only thread of reason in his brain suddenly snapped. He cursed again and swung his fist, smashing it towards Mo Peng's face. Things had happened hastily. Everyone was relying on instinct. Mo Peng was a bit plump, but he was a stout and nimble fatty. He had been smashed on the reality battlefield all year round, so his reaction speed was above that of a normal person. At this distance, he lowered his body and didn't use his fists or feet. He directly went for a headbutt. His round head, along with the sharp and angular tactical helmet, struck between Yu Zheng's chest and abdomen. The impact wasn't small. Yu Zheng's drunkenness hadn't dissipated yet, so he nearly vomited again after this collision. What was even worse was that his balance had been lost. Last time he fell forward and this time he fell backward. Fortunately, there was a place to lean on behind him. When he tripped, his shoulder hit someone's chest and the back of his head collided with something that was soft but not hard. Then he heard a stifled, muffled cry. Zhu Maoxuan's indistinct and hoarse cursing echoed in his ears. Fuck. Zhu Maoxuan was lying on the ground. He was also a bit stunned. It was reasonable to say that Yu Zheng causing a ruckus was advantageous to him. In any case, they were all students of 6th High and companions who had come together. If they really did cause a ruckus, the ones who would be making a fool of themselves would be that group of people. He could watch from the sidelines and taunt them a few times to take advantage of them. This was one of the best results he could think of. Even if Yu Zheng hadn't caused a ruckus, he would have urged him on from the back. But how did things suddenly turn out like this? After a brief moment of confusion, the feelings on his face and body finally had a realistic explanation. Yu Zheng was on top of him and sticky juice had splashed all over his face. The large cup of juice had even smashed into his head. Of course, the most painful part was the bridge of his nose. The back of Yu Zheng's head had smashed into it, and the bitter and fishy taste had mixed in with the juice and flowed into his mouth. It was clear that he had seen blood. Zhu Maoxuan could have dodged it. The elite society under his command appeared as a combat society most of the time. His skills were quite good. But the problem was that there were far too many people following behind him. There were 2 waiters carrying wine and fruit trays, and there were also 2 friends of scoundrels that he had brought along for the sake of raising his aura. The 4 of them blocked him tightly. No matter how good his skills were, it was impossible for him to break through. Sure enough, he shouldn't have come. What should have been a relaxing and pleasant journey of face slapping had turned him into the spearhead. That fellow Juling was not on the same path as him. That was why he had fallen into such a plight. It must be known that this was Frost River Reality Area A. It was one of the most densely populated areas in all of Xia City. This was especially true since this was Cloud City Water Village, a large residential area. The people who came and went were players from the surrounding colleges and high schools. They overlapped greatly with his life circle. He fell here with his 4 limbs facing the sky. His nose was overflowing with blood and juice was splashed all over his face. There seemed to be flashing lights all around him. There was no need for tomorrow. Tonight, his dignified appearance would be spread to every major college forum. This was Zhu Maoxuan's final rational thought. In the next moment, whatever face-slapping plan he had completely collapsed. Zhu Maoxuan roared as he pushed away Yu Zheng, who was still in a stupefied state. He struggled to get up and casually picked up the large cup of juice beside him. Disregarding everything else, he smashed it towards the most densely populated area in front of him. "I'll chop you bastards to pieces." A muffled crash rang out, followed by the screams of a girl. Chapter 407. The matter had undoubtedly blown up. In a short few minutes, the parties involved, waiters, police, doctors, and a large number of onlookers filled Area A of Frost River Reality to the point that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Qiu Peipei had already been sent to the hospital for treatment. Mo Han and Ruan Zihui had also gone to the hospital to take care of her. The remaining people continued to confront each other in the luxury room. It had to be said that the police were not slow. After the incident at Frost River Reality, the government's level of control over public occasions had risen by at least 2 levels. Fortunately, if they had been a bit slower, Zhu Maoxuan would have probably been sent to the hospital on a stretcher assembled by multifunctional robots. After confirming who the main culprit was, Shuelei punched him to the ground. He still couldn't straighten his back. The terrifying spasms of his internal organs transmitted the negative effects to his brain through his nervous system. It made Zhu Maoxuan want to vomit and feel dizzy. However, no injuries could be seen on the surface. Because there were too many onlookers and quite a few people involved, the dispatched police did not take the group away from the scene. Instead, they rushed to the room to understand the situation. The police's inquiry was very simple. They were not interested in complicated grudges. After all, this was just a relatively ordinary public security dispute. The surveillance was very complete, so it was not difficult to make a judgment. Because the hospital's injury examination results had not yet come out, the dispatched police routinely left the social authority numbers of the parties involved. They informed both sides of the process of mediation and civil prosecution. Then, they informed them of the location and time limit for the injury examination. The dispatched police process was completed. Next, Mo Peng, Shuelei, Yu Zheng and Zhu Maoxuan had to go to the police station to make statements. Zhu Maoxuan was fine. He was already an adult and had the ability to act. As for the other 3, they had to notify their guardians according to the rules. All of a sudden, the faces of the 3 turned ugly. Mo Peng and Shuelei were simply worried about being reprimanded by their parents. Yu Zheng's feelings were much more complicated. In fact, when he recovered from his stupor and entered the room and saw the people inside, he hated that he could not immediately kill himself on the floor. Did the heavens specifically come to torment him tonight? We give up the prosecution and request mediation. The one who spoke was Yu Qin. She and Turner hurriedly entered and immediately expressed their stance. At the same time, they took out their guardian's electronic authorization. I am the younger sister of the party involved, Yu Zheng. My father already knows of this matter. This is our stance. Yu Zheng blankly looked over. There was no effective response. Seeing her brother in a daze, Yu Qin was both angry and annoyed. But in terms of cool-headedness, she was 10 times stronger than her brother. She could already see Xie Junping and Hu Huaying standing by Luo Nan's side with dark faces. In fact, the majority of her stated attitude was directed at these 2 masters. Wuxia Pharmaceutical Company could not afford to offend the Xie family and the Hu family. They were even more unwilling to give their peers a reason to talk about them and expose their flaws. Yu Qin had done her best to understand the situation, inform her father, and obtain the relevant authorization in just a few minutes. Unfortunately, from the looks of the current situation, the effects were minimal. Yu Qin didn't take the initiative to talk nonsense. After making her stand clear, she stood with her brother and helped him tidy up his appearance. She took the opportunity to observe the situation in the room. She had seen Xie Junping before. She knew that he was a playboy, a first-class hedonist. But the way he was dressed right now, the way he stood by Luo Nan's side, the way he unconsciously whispered into Luo Nan's ear. No matter how she looked at it, he didn't look like the main character. She seemed to have misjudged the direction from the beginning. In fact, what Yu Zheng did, what the Yu family or Wuxia Pharmaceutical Company didn't really matter. Yu Qin's declaration was just a small interlude. Not many people heard it. At most, she earned a fierce glare from Zhu Maoxuan. Zhu Maoxuan was certainly the most restless person in the room. He saw that his gang of scoundrels from the VIP room had all come down. They couldn't be of much help, but they could support themselves. They could reason with the police. They weren't afraid at all. They had an imposing aura. However, the most crucial person was missing from the list. Zhu Maoxuan turned his head left and right, but he still didn't see anything. He could only ask his friends, "Where's Zhu Ling?" He seems to have gone back upstairs. Zhu Maoxuan only knew now that he and Yu Zheng had gone downstairs to act as gunmen. Zhu Ling, who had made this request, had disappeared without a trace. Zhu Maoxuan's mind immediately exploded. At this time, the police were still BBB carrying out legal education. Zhu Maoxuan's anger rose to his head when he heard this. He suddenly kicked over the high-back chair beside him. Give this nonsense to a fucking lawyer. I want to examine my injuries right now. Zhu Maoxuan's movements were large, and his already spasming internal organs gave him an even worse experience. His body bent like a prawn. Gastric acid sprayed out, burning his throat painfully. His tears and snot also choked out. Shuelei, the one who had done this, didn't even bother to glance at him. He obediently accepted the police's questioning. His attitude was more than 10 times stronger. At most, he was a bit worried because he had invited his parents. Xie Junping and Hu Huaying stood up at this time. They were Acumen College's student council officials. They didn't lack connections and they were experienced in negotiating with the police. They could be considered good doctors after a long illness. They were the best candidates to handle this kind of matter. In addition, there was Tianxi, an expert in communication. She checked for any gaps and filled in any gaps. It seemed that everything was developing in their favor. As for the ability users in the room, they exchanged glances with each other. It was quite awkward. Indeed, they were all gathered inside the room. They studied the magical array, drank and so on. There was a certain distance between them and the conflict zone at the entrance. But to let a delicate little girl get hurt right under their noses was still a very shameful thing. Even Luonan was no longer in the mood to study the magical array. He sized Zhu Maoshuan up and down. He recalled the old events at Ocean Sky Cloud City. He could more or less determine the cause and he felt more and more displeased. He really wanted to find a way to fix things. And it was because of this concern that he heard the name Zhu Ling through his mental senses. Judging from Zhu Maoshuan's intense emotions, it seemed that the situation was more complicated than it seemed. Actually, Luonan didn't need to think about the current situation. However, he hadn't been of any use at all in the beginning, and it seemed that there wasn't much use for him in the future. It made him feel uncomfortable. Luonan's mind spun a few times, and he seized the opportunity to pull Xie Junping over. He asked, "Who's Zhu Ling?" "Zhu Ling?" Xie Junping shook his head. "I've never heard of him. He's not in this circle. Is he a relative of Zhu Maoshuan? Why don't you ask and see?" Luonan activated his living starry sky senses as he spoke, bringing the entire aurora cloud into the range of his senses. At this time, there should be about 10,000 people stationed in Aurora Cloud Capital. Sorting out the tracks of thousands of people would have been a painful process in the past. But right now, Luonan had an initial grasp of the warning senses of a closed system. It was much easier for him to divide them according to the level of threat. What he sensed was rather subtle. The strongest reaction of malice came from Zhu Maoshuan not too far away. Luonan should have discovered this a long time ago. It was just that although this person's evil intent was strong, his body didn't possess any extraordinary strength. The stimulation was very weak. Plus, Luonan had been immersed in the study of magical arrays, so he had unconsciously overlooked this. From this, it could be seen that the alertness of a closed system in a passive state could very likely ignore a considerable amount of information. He had to pay attention to this in the future. Luonan continued to comb through the information. It didn't take much effort before he found 2 targets. However, it was not a malicious reaction. It was not even from Frost River reality, but from a higher level. What attracted Luonan was undoubtedly the special reflection of these 2 in the living starry sky. Ability user. And one of the ability users was quite extraordinary. There was a clear distortion to the surrounding starry sky. It was as if it was being burned by incorporeal smoke. If Luonan had observed it 2 days earlier, he would have only been able to see a gloomy and blurry nebula without the aid of the telescope. Making a preliminary judgment from this standard, this was already a B-rank ability user. There was another rather interesting point. Although there was a difference in strength between these 2 people, when comparing the constellation structures of the 2, there were quite a few similarities. Moreover, Luonan was quite familiar with it. An upright tetrahedron. A burner. It was not strange to see 2 burners in Xia City. The society statistics showed that there were over 300 of them. Most of them were in the military. A small portion belonged to Quantum Corporation. They were out for a stroll and a meal. It was quite normal to bump into them in Cloud City Water Village. These 2 people didn't seem to have anything to do with the conflict below. Luonan didn't feel any element of malice from them. The living starry sky indicated that he didn't have any connection with these 2 people in any real sense. Luonan didn't want to complicate matters. He carefully examined the burner that he suspected to be a B-rank ability user. The strength it displayed was quite astonishing. Although its format of fire was restrained, its pressure had already penetrated the depths of the mental plane. In the general sense of the 3 levels, 1 region and 1 realm, it should have touched upon the edge of the abyss region. It would have been fine if this was compared to the mentally enhanced side, but everyone knew that burners were all fleshly enhanced. To be able to obtain this kind of result as an assistant section master meant that he was already on the same level as the ears of Truth Fairchild. Did Xia City have a burner of this level? Xuanhuan had explained the relevant information to Luonan, but he had no recollection of it. Out of caution, Luonan controlled his soul strength to maintain a distance from the material plane. He gave up on observing the burner's true appearance to avoid being captured. That would be awkward. Luonan memorized the location and removed his senses. He didn't discover anything else after that. It seemed that this was indeed an exception. However, the appearance of a B-rank burner required his companions to be notified. This was to avoid sudden events affecting them. This was experience, and it was also a principle. Xuanhuan and the others had been emphasizing similar requirements in their lectures for some time now. Luonan immediately published this information in the temporary mission window. There's a suspected B-rank burner and a C-rank burner. The two should be together. Their location is above Frost River reality. Chapter 408. It was common knowledge that extraordinaries had yet to appear within the burner community. But by controlling the special deep blue platform and mounting weapons, they could achieve extremely high destructive power. Any extraordinaries would have to kneel if they were equipped with a nuclear warhead with a yield of 10 million tons. Luonan knew this, but he didn't think about it. He was reminded by Papercut and suddenly had a new train of thought. B+ rank burners. I remember Sister Xuanhuan saying that they all hold the rank of general? Yeah. There are some people with real power who control quite a bit of the special forces of the field army. For example, the coastal defense force closest to Xia City, where Secretary He's father worked and where Cragburst was a part of, has a special combat brigade. The commander of that brigade is a high-ranking major general called Tian Bang. He's a pretty awesome character. Tian Bang? Yeah. He has the same surname as that senior of yours, but he shouldn't be related. He's an orphan. He participated in the Deep Blue Platform project since he was young and underwent deep remodeling. Of course, this is internal information. It only circulates in the inner world. Luonan nodded. I understand. If an orphan or a young child participated in the remodeling of burners, it would be hard for people not to suspect the lower limits of the government and the military. This was undoubtedly something that those in power did their utmost to avoid. Is this person Tian Bang? The coastal defense base isn't that far from Xia City. It's hard to say. I haven't seen him yet. I just heard that he floats on the sea all year round, taking turns to fight with the marine mutants. He's an extremely powerful combat type. Fiske, this is troublesome. Papercut's brows furrowed tightly as he spoke. The branch's intelligence department didn't react to such a powerful person entering Xia City. It doesn't seem like he came in fair and square. Really? Luonan was quite calm. It didn't matter if it was Tian Bang or not. He definitely didn't have any ill intentions. Let's contact Secretary. It's best if we ask her father if he knows anything. If it really is Tian Bang, then this is quite a taboo. Luonan tried to contact Xuanhuan, then he shrugged. He still couldn't contact Xuanhuan. He could only leave a message explaining the latest situation and his judgment. Right now, Xie Junping was still talking over the phone about Pan Juling's background. Zhu Maoshuan was still stomping his feet, his emotions stirred. It was as if he was the one being bullied. Only Mo Peng and Luo Biao were able to exchange a few curses with him. Most people could only watch coldly from the sidelines. Only Chiu Peipei's family had the qualifications to sue or to settle. Luonan and the others could only act as parties and witnesses, providing testimony. Going back and forth like this, he felt more and more bored. Papercut was really worried that Luonan wouldn't be able to take it and cause more trouble. He pulled Luonan to the corner of the sofa, talking as they walked. This is why many people don't like the secular world. When it came down to it, there were a bunch of rules. The more people he knew, the more restrictions there were. Look at Lazy, that punch was really cool, but it's going to take a long time. He might even have to go to court. Luonan sat down on the sofa. This time, Luonan paid more attention to Cat Eyes. Papercut was between him and Cat Eyes. Brother Papercut, how do you usually handle things? Meh. In the middle of the night, he sent a bunch of paper dolls to his house for a party. Yeah, that's about it. Luonan felt that Luonan's expression was certainly very peculiar right now. Papercut chuckled. With supernatural powers, how could I still strictly follow the logic of the secular world? Unless this world has enough power to counter us. On the sofa, Cat Eyes gently swirled her wine glass and cast a sidelong glance. You're sick. Papercut didn't get angry. I'm just saying, right? Also, put yourself in the shoes of others. If you use abnormal logic to deal with others, others will use abnormal logic to deal with you. We're in Xia City, so it's a bit better. Look at Red Fox. He was eradicating evil and eliminating evil, but what happened to him in the end? Sometimes I really want to be controlled by someone. I want to follow a set of rules and live a peaceful life. Headquarters might have been able to do it in the past. Unfortunately, it's impossible to count on those bastards right now. Luo Nan handed over a fruit platter as a form of consolation. He asked casually, how many ability users are like you guys? Papercut picked up a few apple slices. What do you mean by, like you guys? Luo Nan thought for a moment and said, you guys have a proper job in society, earn money to support yourself, and follow the rules of the secular world most of the time. Of the ability users he knew, Cat Eyes taught dancing, Papercut had his own craft store, Octopus and Mr. White were doctors, Mr. Giant Arm ran a dojo, and Her Majesty Empress Wu ran a firm. They were all very close to the secular world. However, there were also people like President Ouyang who wholeheartedly devoted themselves to research. There were also people like Bamboo Pole who were more of a homebody and only served his peers. Cragburst and Red Fox didn't have stable jobs either, but their days were still quite comfortable. Just like this, the inner world and the secular world converged and separated. It was complicated and interwoven. Many times, it was impossible to grasp the corresponding pulse. It was very vexing. Papercut opened his mouth to answer, but he suddenly remembered that he still had a mission tonight. He turned his head with a smile and said to Cat Eyes, how about you explain it a bit? Cat Eyes' expression didn't change. She poured the peat-flavored wine down her throat. She sneered leisurely, but she was disinclined to pay attention to him. Papercut didn't insist. He shrugged and said, this is the way of the world. The barrier between ability users and secular society is indeed getting thinner and thinner. There are people who oppose this trend. There are people who approve of it. There are people who let nature take its course. Xia City has fewer rules and regulations. There are many people who let nature take its course. But in other cities, there are quite a few people who are very passionate about infiltrating. They want to realize the era of ability users. There are also some people who are very determined to maintain their distance and maintain their bloodline. It was unknown which sentence aroused her interest, but Cat Eyes downed the wine in her cup in one gulp. She suddenly spoke, actually they're all the same. The faction of people above people. Luo Nan understood in an instant, so they feel that they're higher than normal people? Misophobia or the desire to dominate? Cat Eyes laughed to herself as she spoke. She cast a sidelong glance at Luo Nan, for example, a certain someone. Boss Luo. What do you think? This topic was off topic. Plus, it didn't seem like an inquiry. It seemed more like sarcasm. Luo Nan didn't want to answer, nor did he feel the need to. Xie Junping just so happened to finish making a round of phone calls. He walked over and said, Nanster, I got some information. That Zhu Ling is the son of Zhu Maoshuan's uncle. He joined the military many years ago. Recently, he was transferred from the City Defense Army to the Coastal Defense Army. He's already a lieutenant colonel. I heard he's a burner. Burner? The Coastal Defense Army? Luo Nan and Papercut locked gazes. They immediately thought of the two people upstairs. No matter how many burners there were in Xia City, no matter how many talents there were in the Coastal Defense Army, they couldn't just randomly pick a B+ rank big shot, right? It's 80% likely. This damn luck. Who is it? Xie Junping didn't want to quarrel with that bro Zhu Maoshuan. He sat on the sofa, leaned back and groaned. Only now did he show a bit of the elegant demeanor of a hedonistic young master from before. Luo Nan observed a bit through the perspective of the living starry sky. He felt that Xie Junping's constellation projection really did have some subtle changes. However, the most important thing right now was to investigate the person suspected to be Tianbang. Luo Nan didn't have any enmity right now, but if a grudge were to form because of his relationship with Zhu Maoshuan and Zhu Ling, then it would be a headache to deal with it. Luo Nan was just about to go investigate when a voice rang out from the door. Everyone had sharp ears and eyes. They heard the voice over there. Tianxi. You're here too? Perfect. Call everyone over. Let's discuss how to deal with this. Who was this? The voice was a bit familiar, but what left a deeper impression was the arrogant and bossy attitude. At first, one would think that a big boss like President Ouyang or Her Majesty Empress Wu had personally come. Luo Nan really didn't remember who it was for the time being, but Xie Junping, who had just relaxed, suddenly sat up straight. What's he doing here? In any case, he doesn't come with good intentions. This bro will seize the opportunity to put on a show or two. I'm afraid Tianxi won't be able to handle it. As he spoke, Xie Junping hastily got up and walked over. Luonan and Papercut glanced at each other. Luonan split a bit of attention to quickly confirm the other's identity. Qin Weikan, the vice president of the Student Council of Acumen College, the president of the Mutual Assistance Association. He had an elite face, but it was hard to have a good impression of this fellow. Right now, Qin Weikan was wearing a casual suit. It didn't quite match the atmosphere of Frost River reality. However, his posture was tall and straight. His every movement was very stylish. He really did attract the attention of others when he walked in through the door. However, if he were to maintain this posture and walk into the crowd, it was hard to say whether or not the loyal Shuele would give him an iron fist. Qin Weikan didn't pay attention to Shuele. It could be said that he didn't pay attention to anyone. He was just a bit dissatisfied with Tianxi, who stood there stiffly. Tianxi wasn't as quick-witted as usual, but he didn't say much. He just waved his hand and strengthened his body language. At the same time, he used his wristband to talk to someone else. I also hope that Frost River reality can deal with this in a timely manner. I don't want the existence of some black sheep to affect the good reputation of the students. Alright, Managerine. You'll be here soon, right? Alright, we'll talk when you arrive. Qin Weikan let out a light breath and his expression relaxed a bit. He turned his eyes and saw that Tianxi was still standing there. He was a bit surprised. Everyone has been summoned? Everyone is here. The police officer is here too. What's the point of summoning? Xie Junping walked closer and said with a chuckle, Vice President Qin, it's rare to see you come to a place like Frost River reality. Which honored guest are you entertaining? Qin Weisan's gaze swept across Xie Junping's face. There was no emotion. There was no hostility. It was more like he was ignoring Xie Junping. But if one were to say that he was arrogant, it seemed that his mind was a bit scattered. Luonan observed and sensed from the side. It was a bit strange. However, what attracted his attention the most was the person Qin Weikan was talking to. His surname was Yin, and he was the manager of Frost River reality. Could it be? Before he could finish his thought, Luonan was reminded. He confirmed that a familiar target was approaching from far away. She had entered the edge of his sensing range and was rapidly closing in. Luonan no longer paid attention to how Qin Weikan and Xie Junping would negotiate. He sat on the sofa and his brows furrowed. He locked onto his target and watched her approach step by step. Not long after, Luonan was able to clearly perceive the sound of her footsteps through the deliberate filtering of his mental senses. The footsteps broke for a moment when they were about 30 meters apart, but they soon connected. Several seconds later, there was a knock on the door. A white-collared beauty with an outstanding temperament stepped into the room. Her makeup was exquisite, and her bearing was extraordinary. She perfectly displayed the most appropriate and mature style of a woman of her age. After she entered the room, she turned her gaze and took in the situation of the entire room. Her cold gaze paused slightly on Luonan's face before sweeping across Papercut, Cat Eyes and Shuele. She concealed herself quite well. If Luonan had not anticipated this, he might have missed it. This kind of directionality meant that they were both in the same trade or enemies. There was no other possibility. Sure enough, it was Yinlu. Luonan was baffled. Why wasn't this sister holed up at home and properly serving the human-faced arachnid's avatar? What was she doing out here? Luonan's thoughts were extinguished, and his heart sank without the slightest warning. Well, that wasn't right. The signs existed, and they clearly appeared above the living starry sky. At this moment, the B+ rank burner in the Long Willow Pavilion, who was several hundred meters away, suddenly surged with hostility. He pointed in the direction of the room and locked onto his target. Chapter 409. From Luonan's perspective, the other party's hostility was obvious. She had locked onto her target and would make a move in an instant. However, due to the gap in perception, the other people in the luxurious room did not react. Overall, the atmosphere was still very calm. Yinlu? Papercut recognized Yinlu. Yinli's identity in the inner world was semi-public. After all, the Frost River Waterway project relied on Frost River reality to exist. It was a multifaceted collaboration. There needed to be a person overseeing the project to make everyone feel at ease. Papercut knew, but he did not take the initiative to greet her. He could see that Yinlu was not in a good mood. His gaze swept across the room, and the smile on his face, which could still be considered professional, was about to disappear. Papercut chuckled. She seems to have a problem with you. Luonan grunted. He was not surprised. From Yin Li's perspective, Luonan could be considered the main culprit behind all the turmoil at the Frost River Reality flagship store on Fudong Main Street. It started with him. He catalyzed the escalation of conflicts. In the end, the gold-sucking pool with a daily revenue of over 10 million became a bottomless pit that needed to be renovated. It had yet to recover to this day. Other people might not know the twists and turns, but how could Yin Lu, the vice ablatum of the Blood Flame Order, not know? Luonan had seen her through the Wraith sign at least 2 or 3 times recently. She had expressed her grievances during the high-level meetings of the Blood Flame Order. The depth of her grievances could be seen. Now that she saw Luonan again and gave him trouble, Yin Lu did not immediately lose her temper. This showed that she had cultivated herself well. Luonan did not have the time to understand Yin Li's thoughts. He leaned back on the sofa. His eyes looked empty, but they were actually transparent. The focus of his attention jumped from the B+ rank burner to Yin Lu, and then to the human-faced arachnid avatar that accompanied Yin Lu. After all, this fellow truly belonged to him. Right now, the Wraith sign was habitually hiding at the border between the Abyss region and the Polar Domain. This was a domain that 99% of ability users would find hard to reach. No one but Luonan could detect the Wraith sign in the room. The Wraith sign was like a greedy beast. Its 6 pupils circulated with colorful light as it instinctively searched the area for a target it could eat. As his level of power increased, the average emotional turbid flow was no longer attractive to the Wraith sign. Ordinary aptitude users were nothing to him. Apart from the fact that their instincts to devour their own kind still existed, their diet was getting narrower and narrower. It was precisely because of this that the Blood Flame Order's members were so moved by the hunting of the wing-hand vampire bats this morning. Soon, the Wraith sign searched the vicinity of the luxurious room. It didn't have the guts to touch its true master, Luonan. The rest of the ability users didn't enter its eyes. From this point of view, the current Wraith sign was a picky eater. It wouldn't eat it rashly. It was extremely easy to raise. It was also a street sweeper that devoured the avatars of other faced spiders. Its contribution to society had skyrocketed. Luonan laughed involuntarily when his thoughts reached this point. But soon he was unable to laugh. B+ rank burners were already extremely profound on the spiritual plane. When their hostility manifested, the pressure was even greater. At this time, they had already entered the Abyss region and continued to explore deeper, searching level by level. Yes, search, that's right. Luonan finally understood. It was a bit far-fetched to say that the B+ rank burner was targeting Yin Lu. After all, Yin Lu was a famous character in both the mortal world and the inner world. A suspected important member of the military actually wanted to set up a trap to target her. There were many aspects that didn't make sense. But if the factor of the human-faced arachnid was added, the relevant reason instantly became sufficient. After all, the human-faced arachnid was the most dangerous Darksider life form that the military and political departments of Xia City had joined hands to obliterate. This reason alone was enough to suppress everything else. Luonan saw a wisp of fiery smoke continue to spiral upwards. The Abyss region wasn't enough. It continued to go deeper, gradually approaching the boundary between the Abyss region and the Polar region. The most terrifying thing was the aura of life within the fiery smoke. It was a faint wisp, but its foundation was strong. It was like the fragrance of meat. The fragrance rose in spirals after being roasted by the smoke and fire. The human-faced arachnid hadn't been found yet, but this idiot, driven by instinct, was gradually unable to restrain himself from the fragrance of meat that drifted over. It became quite restless. If Luonan's thoughts hadn't intervened in time, this idiot would have probably charged over in delight. Then it would fall headfirst into the trap. Now the situation was clear. This was a trap. A trap targeted at Yin Lu, targeted at the human-faced arachnid, and even targeted at the Blood Flame Order. Qin Weiken was the bait of the real world. He had lured Yin Lu over. The B+ rank burner was the hunter. He specialized in targeting the human-faced arachnid. He had used a technique to lure it. These two might not be the only participants. The officer called Zhu Ling was most likely one of them. And no matter how many participants there were, no matter which power was behind the scenes, one thing was certain. They had obtained extremely accurate information. Think about it. How long had it been since Yin Lu took control of the human-faced arachnid? It had only been this afternoon. The first grazing hadn't even begun yet, but the other party was already certain that the human-faced arachnid was by her side and had set up a trap targeting her. This was the tempo of a traitor. The faces of the upper echelons of the Blood Flame Order instantly flashed in Luonan's mind. Unfortunately, his understanding of this group of people was still superficial over the past month. It was far too difficult to find the so-called traitor. He took a deep breath and steadied his mind. The B+ rank burner was not targeting Luonan, but his target was undoubtedly the Wraith Sign. As one of Luonan's most important believers, the Wraith Sign was once the sole reliance of Luonan's mental attacks. Even now, the Wraith Sign held a pivotal position in Luonan's sealing system. Therefore, Luonan received an astonishing pressure from the living starry sky while the other party was unaware of it. The starry sky fluctuated from nothing, and it seemed to grow more and more intense. This was definitely not going to work. Luonan didn't have the time to think too much. He first overstepped his boundaries and stepped over Yinlu. He gave the Wraith Sign an order. Go deeper. Go deeper. Luonan let this idiot dive deeper into the mental plane and play hide and seek with the other party. As long as the other party could not truly lock onto the Wraith Sign's position, it would be hard for him to determine Yinlu's position. It was possible to delay for a period of time. The short-term results were fine. The other party had been using his baiting methods for a long time, but he had gained nothing. He was already a bit puzzled. The mental smoke began to change directions substantially, doing even more useless work. Luonan let out a breath of relief. Right now, Yinlu was completely unaware of the impending crisis in the room. She was just negotiating with Chen Weikan. Her professional attitude was top-notch. Luonan didn't care what they said. At most, he was curious. Was this fellow Chen Weikan purely a bait tool, or was he a participant with autonomous capabilities? Yes, let's let the details go for now. Driving the Wraith Sign to temporarily hide in the polar domain was the only thing Luonan could do from a technical point of view. But this kind of hiding could not last long. Let alone others, even Yinlu herself would panic if this continued for too long. The connection between the Wraith Sign and Yinlu was extremely weak when hidden in the polar domain. This could very well lead to new misunderstandings. Who cares what misunderstandings she has? It would be smoother to consider things from his own perspective. Luonan's heart thumped. He had enough headaches lately because of the matter with the Wraith Sign. It was said to fish in troubled waters. Perhaps this was an opportunity? If he could really take advantage of the chaos to retrieve the Wraith Sign and throw the blame onto the military, then wouldn't it be the best course of action for him to stay out of the matter? Luonan couldn't help but ponder upon this thought. He was calculating how many resources he could use. His thoughts drifted, and he suddenly noticed the temporary mission window on the psychic wave network. There were only a few messages left and he was suddenly stunned. Last time at Frost River Reality it was more or less like this, right? He was even more selfless than this. He wholeheartedly wanted to save people, and then he messed things up and got out of hand. Right now he had Papercut, Cat Eyes and Shuele by his side. It was true that these were his helpers, but how dangerous would it be to face a B+ level power? Not to mention his own brothers and sisters, classmates and so on. Bang. Luonan smacked his own head. What's wrong? Papercut was baffled. Nothing. I've cleared my head. Luonan let out a breath. He was a bit annoyed. Hiyuan had been exhorting him to his face every time she gave him a lesson. She told him to pay attention to teamwork and other matters. Why did he nearly act willfully when things came to this? You need to grow up a bit. Luonan muttered to himself. Papercut thought that Luonan was talking to him and didn't hear him clearly. He asked, "What did you say?" Luonan laughed. Tonight's gathering will end here. Staying here will just be watching people act cool. It's better to leave. Papercut swept his gaze over to Chen Weikan and laughed. A wise choice. Then let's go. Luonan's mind was set. He didn't hesitate any longer. He simply stood up and headed outside. His movement was not a big deal, but Yinlu instinctively became alert. She couldn't be blamed for this. After the two incidents at Frost River Reality and Ocean Sky Cloud City, Luonan's reputation had rapidly spread throughout the inner world. He had established a benchmark. Right now, who didn't know that Luonan of the Xia City branch was a young man capable of tossing and turning? His talent was outstanding and he was vicious and merciless. Snake Tongue, Puppeteer, Tank and other veteran ability users had all fallen to his hands. Especially Snake Tongue. Yinlu's position in the inner world was roughly the same as Snake Tongue's. Such a shrewd and powerful curse master was gone just like that. How could Yinlu not be vigilant? Chen Weikan had been talking to Yinlu, but he saw her mind wander. He followed her line of sight and finally noticed Luonan. As a leading figure for many years, Chen Weikan was extremely sensitive to the general atmosphere. He soon discovered that this boy who was walking outside had a childish air about him. Not only did he attract Yin Li's attention, even Xie Junping, Hu Huaying, Tianxi, and the others naturally focused their gazes on him. The degree of focus and intensity had already exceeded the scope of normal attention. The conversation that had been within his control suddenly couldn't continue. At this time Xie Junping opened his mouth and asked, "Nanster you?" Luonan laughed, "Everything's fine here. Let's go home." Xie Junping was stunned. But when he heard these words, even Cat Eyes, who was usually indifferent to him on the sofa, stood up with a cold snort. Tianxi, Papercut, Shuele and the others directly started walking. They felt inexplicably excited. He shrugged and pushed Du Yong, who still didn't know what was going on, to keep up with them. He laughed and said, "Then let's get out of here." Several people moved, forming a chain effect. Hu Huaying, Mo Peng, Luo Biao, and the others instinctively moved as well. The standoff in the private room suddenly collapsed. For the fastest and most accurate novel reading, please visit Yes, as long as you remember to follow the police's request and provide a timely explanation, it'll be fine. Thank you. Tianxi bowed politely and left. From start to finish he didn't even look at Chen Weican. Chen Weican's face darkened visibly. He subconsciously raised his arm, wanting to do something, but with a bunch of people watching him, this embarrassing action was eventually controlled. Luonan was the first to go out, but he had a clear understanding of the events that occurred afterwards. He had a guess in his heart. Chen Weican was more or less autonomous, but he seemed to know very little about the inner world. Perhaps he had just come into contact with this domain, or perhaps he had been on the fringes for many years. The latter was more likely. Looking at the connections, this trap targeted at Yin Lu and the human-faced arachnid was certainly organized. The possibility of him being from the military was higher. Chen Weican's background was also closer to the military. Since that was the case, it was best to ask He Yuan about the relevant questions. But up until now there had been no reply from the temporary mission window. The sound of footsteps approached from behind, and Tianxi took 2 quick steps to catch up. Her attitude was different from the cold and aloof one in the room. She was a bit nervous right now. She called out "Junior," but she probably felt that it wasn't too appropriate. She ended up cutting it short. Luonan's mind was like a clear mirror. He knew that it wasn't easy for Tianxi to decisively choose a side after years of resistance. Even though this kind of decisive choice was a bit too much. He didn't have any ill feelings toward Tianxi. Moreover, he felt a bit apologetic because of the matter at Ocean Sky Cloud City. He didn't want Tianxi to be overly worried and fearful, so he turned his head and smiled to comfort her. Then he thought of Chen Weican's position in the school. He was afraid that Chen Weican would make things difficult for Tianxi later, so he said, "Senior sister, you're about to take the postgraduate exam. It's fine to let go of some school affairs." His words were simple, but Tianxi misunderstood. She immediately said, "I'll resign from my position in the Mutual Assistance Society when I get back." Holy crap. Luo Biao, who had followed them out, gasped in surprise. He couldn't help but move closer to Mo Peng's ear. "Hey Nanster, you're a big shot now?" Mo Peng had been stupefied for a long time. He was affected by the atmosphere back in the room, so he unconsciously followed them out. Now he came to a realization. Why was it that when Nanster moved, half the people in the room followed him? It must be known that practically everyone here was older than Luonan. Not to mention Tianxi, Xie Junping and Hu Huaying were even cadres of the student council. Their family backgrounds were quite extraordinary. But these people all had Luonan as their axis. They naturally didn't have a trace of reluctance. This didn't make sense. Mo Peng was stupefied when Mo Han, who was accompanying Chiu Peipei, called, "Is everything alright over there?" "Oh no?" Actually, Mo Peng didn't know whether or not this counted as an issue. Mo Han believed him. She just told him, "Yu Qin just asked me for Luonan's number? Is the police's judgment leaning more toward us?" Yeah. If you want it, then you want it. If you don't, then it'll be too late." "Ha." Luonan heard the conversation between Mo Peng and the others clearly from up front. This gave him a reminder. He immediately discussed with Papercut in a low voice, "Mo Han and the others are still in the hospital. Take them away. Don't stay here any longer." Papercut was startled. He finally felt that Luonan wanted to leave. Aside from not wanting to cause trouble, there seemed to be some special considerations. Is something the matter? This message was sent to the temporary mission window. Cat Eyes and Xuelei could see it, and their gazes immediately shot over. Luonan also responded from the mission window, that B+ rank doesn't seem to be here purely for a meal. In reality there was certainly some other plan. It was just that Luonan didn't want to talk about the details of the human-faced arachnid and the blood flame order. Papercut didn't know this. He asked, "It's not targeted at us, right?" "It should be." Luonan sensed something before Papercut could fall. The B+ rank burner was still searching, but the direction of his mental smoke was no longer in the Abyss region or the polar domain. Instead, he quietly turned back to touch the area where their group was located. What was going on? Did he start to change his train of thought because he couldn't find the human-faced arachnid? That side was quite confident in their source of information. Luonan's lips curled. He was worried that the Wraith sign would hide in the polar domain for too long, creating unnecessary misunderstandings for Yin Lu. Since the burners had changed their train of thought a step ahead, Luonan took advantage of the situation. He pulled the Wraith sign out of the polar domain for a breather. It was the same as playing hide and seek. As it turned out, Luonan's choice was extremely timely. Yin Lu was clearly a bit restless in the luxurious room at this time. The appearance of Luonan and the other members of the Xia City branch had already made her vigilant. The human-faced arachnid's ambiguous attitude put a great deal of pressure on a newbie like her. The human-faced arachnid's clone promptly returned to its normal area, allowing Yin Lu to let out a secret sigh of relief. However, she was a priest who had cultivated for a long time. She more or less had some intuition. The slight disharmony she experienced over and over again formed a rather negative psychological suggestion. It made her want to retreat spontaneously. Luonan was a bit surprised, but he did see traces of a silhouette that was similar to Zhu Maoxuan's from this person's face. Zhu Ling didn't have that much of an evil aura compared to his cousin. However, his gaze was calm and straightforward. It made people a bit unhappy when they stared at him. The group of people still hadn't figured out how to deal with this when the mission window suddenly flickered and jumped. Yuan, who hadn't replied all this time, contacted them through instant messaging. Luonan and the others greeted her one after another. "Sister Yuan." "Hello, Secretary." From the video, it could be seen that Yuan was multitasking. She was contacting someone. Her brows were slightly furrowed and she wasn't in a good mood. She hung up after several seconds and focused on this side. "Apologies, Mr. Luo. Apologies, everyone. I just saw this, but there's a matter that just so happens to be related to you." Without any pleasantries, Yuan sent over an electronic file. The format was extremely formal, and it clearly bore the authority seal of a government department. Yuan explained further. The Xia City police and military received a reliable tip that traces of the human-faced arachnid's clone were discovered in the vicinity of Cloud City Water Village. They decided to launch a search operation at the last minute. According to the agreement they reached with the society a month ago, they hope that the nearby members of the society will cooperate. It can't be. Xia City hasn't been swept clean yet? Xuelei had confronted the human-faced arachnid head-on before. He had a deep impression of the formless and shadowless demon. He immediately drew in a cold breath. Papercut was more concerned with practical issues. Did they say how to cooperate? Yuan opened the electronic file and indicated to Luonan and the others to look at the highlighted paragraphs. They demand that all members of the society within a radius of 15 kilometers, with the main building of Cloud City Water Village as the center, must report their current location and go to a designated location to record their privileges. They want to clear the area? Yes. In principle, no ability user is allowed to stay within this area. After recording their privileges, the members who wish to participate must obey the commands of the military and police. The military and political departments and the society will give corresponding rewards. Those who don't wish to participate must quickly leave the scene to avoid the human-faced arachnid's invasion. While Yuan was explaining, Luonan and the others had already waited for the elevator to arrive. They poured into the same elevator. Who knew that Zhu Ling, who had been observing with cold eyes all this time, would suddenly take 2 quick steps forward, openly following them. The gazes of several ability users gouged at Zhu Ling's face at the same time, but Zhu Ling pretended not to notice. Luonan sized up Zhu Ling a few times. At the same time, he sent a message through the mission window. "This document was sent within 5 minutes, right? 4 minutes and 20 seconds ago. This job." Luonan gasped in surprise. He had gotten through all of Xia City's military and political departments in one afternoon. As soon as he failed to lure the human-faced arachnid's clone, He immediately caused a big scene. He even gave the green light all the way. Even the society was mobilized. This further confirmed his previous conjecture. It was very likely that Xia City's military and political departments were leading this operation. He could see their determination even more clearly. Sure enough, relying on a cheating device to hide and seek wasn't a long-term solution. Leaving the battlefield as soon as possible was the wisest choice. However, the other side didn't want to let go so easily. Luonan gave Zhu Ling another glance. He wanted to probe deeper, but he was worried that Mo Peng and the others were present. He cast a glance at Papercut. Papercut understood tacitly. His fat face instantly revealed a pleasantly surprised smile. "Hey? Little Ling, that's you, right?" Zhu Ling was stunned. He didn't have time to react before Papercut grabbed him. "Aha, I'm definitely not mistaken. I've seen your photo before. You look so handsome even without your military uniform." You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.